coming to you, I guess, Hira, is what do you think healthy leadership looks like? Especially when we're thinking the challenging traditional leadership, especially amongst marginalized groups.
Yes, so I think the pre-existing mythical standards and yardsticks with which we measure the effectiveness of leadership are no longer relevant, or even if they are relevant, they are changing. What leadership traditionally looked like and sounded like is changing. So as an Asian brown Muslim woman who's also an immigrant, I wouldn't be expecting myself to be in spaces like this or giving keynotes. But I guess the fact that I'm doing it shows that I think leadership has now become more inclusive, and particularly if you talk about female leadership traits such as empathy, and I know I'm going to talk about those other skills as well, empathy and compassion and humility and collaboration and process orientation has now become very important. And I don't want to make this a gender thing, but during COVID-19, we did see lots of articles around how women leaders were doing better. Why? Because they demonstrated empathy and they had compassion, but not to forget the hardcore skills. And Stanford did a research and they showed that women who actually combined male traits and technical skills alongside women-specific trends were promoted much faster. So it's not just women-specific strengths you need, you also need the hard technical skills, as Magda said, and you need that confidence, you need that aggression. But I think gone are the days when we used to look down upon female-specific traits, because people are now increasingly talking about vulnerability. What healthy leadership looks like is that now leaders are more tuned in with their emotions, they're tapping into emotional intelligence, they're being authentic, they know they can make mistakes, they know they can, it's okay to not know everything, and it's not just about the expectations people have of leaders. I think leaders themselves are now prioritizing mental health. So I think that way leadership is changing and evolving.
Yeah, a really key point there. I think the landscape has changed as a result of the pandemic as well, accelerating a lot of that. We've seen that if you want people to follow you, you need to be one of those leaders that can do both.
Yes.
So I think it's quite vital. So coming to you, Elizabeth, to get your input, I guess, looking at your experience of working in local authority, and then the link between leadership and health and well-being.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a slightly different approach on this, and I think I'm going to emphasize the importance of quiet leadership. And I was having a conversation with my good friend who's here in the audience, Joe, last night about what leadership looks like. And sometimes it's not anything that looks like this, or it's not a rah-rah, or it's not presenting keynotes. And I resonate with this strongly because I believe it's a lot about impact and how you carry people with you and drive collective action. And one of the key foundations of how I work and advise with people and organizations is that the health and well-being of you and yourself and those around you, which then extends and has knock-on effects to your community, is so vital and necessary for all of us to thrive and flourish. So part of the bottom-up approach is looking a lot about what happens in the local community with a strengths-based approach and seeing what can be addressed from this grassroots approach. And I think that's so powerful because it allows us to find ways to address inequalities, inequities, and say what is happening here and who's in the community that can carry everybody forward because they're trusted. They have the soft skills. They can be coached very easily on some of those hard skills, perhaps, and really take a strengths-based approach, as I mentioned, to bringing people along so that we can do this together.
Thank you for that. I think the thing that resonated and came out from what you said is referencing, I don't know how many saw the World Health Organization guidelines on mental health that came out like last week, where they state, I guess the thing that resonated the most is business as usual will not do. And I think this is what we have to remember. And I think when it comes to leadership as well, the traditional way of leadership wasn't working, isn't working, especially when we look at retaining and recruiting talent. I guess that's when we're seeing a bit of a difference. So moving on, I guess coming back to you, Hira, if we could share 3 key points of how leaders could be promoting psychological safety for men, women, non-binary people, marginalized groups, what would you say those 3 would be?
Gosh, I've written a book on this, so I could really speak a lot.
So let's take 3 for the audience.
Yes. So I usually say challenge yourself, challenge others, and challenge the organization culture. There's also the institution part, I'm going to leave that out. So when you are talking about challenging yourself, I think as leaders, to create psychological safety, we need to make sure we don't assume and generalize in cluster groups. So all marginalized groups have their unique identities. Just because they're marginalized, they have common things and common barriers, but just because an Asian woman or a black woman belong to a racially diverse community doesn't mean the challenges are going to be the same. So I respect the unique identities, do not assume. If you don't know, ask questions, do surveys, find out what it is that they want, and then take action. So ask, do not assume, ask, and take action. These are 3 points, but in action, if I can be a little cheeky, I'll add a few points very quickly. That's when you're taking action, make sure that you are tackling microaggressions, you are making the space safe enough for everybody to voice out what they want, and looking at it from an intersectional point of view, how sometimes some groups face multiple challenges which are so intertwined that it's very difficult to differentiate where one begins and the other ends.
I love the concept of mosaic role modeling. So I think oftentimes we pick the wrong people to be role models for us. We find people who are like us, and then we want to be like them.
Sure.
And you're not always going to find a perfect person. I do not know one single perfect person. And if they're so alike to you, are you learning from them, truly learning from their different perspective and their diversity?
And that's really important, and it doesn't mean I'm not committed to my job. And for women, getting to the point to being able to say that is about culture. How do we support each other? It's not just about what you do internally, but when you see something happening to somebody else, how are you lifting them up? We cannot do this if we are not grounded in our own health and well-being. And that truly is financial, as Rachel shared, mental and physical health, and a healthier connection to the purpose that we have in life. Is it just about making money? Or are we leaders that are going to lead us to a future where we truly have more sustainability? And so I'm going to leave you with that thought to go and talk amongst yourselves and come back, because the next section is going to be about you. And we want to get you involved in this conversation, because we know there is wisdom in this room, and we always learn when we open up this discussion. You're going to hear from some truly amazing male leaders, and it is not easy to find men that are doing this type of work. So I am deeply grateful, and I'm going to say it again when they get up, for being here to share that. And we want you to think about this. Think about this idea of what positive disruption means for you. So go get a drink and meet us back here in, I'm going to say 7 minutes, because we went a little bit over. Thank you.
Put your hands up in the air like this. Go, it's up to me. We all have to get involved in disruption, and so I want you to be thinking about, next slide, I want you to be thinking about, if you're the disruptor in your space, how's it going? Are you well into the throes of it? Are you challenged? Are you struggling to speak up? Do you know what you want to speak up about? How is it going? So we have a few questions. First one is, how do you answer this call to be the disruptor in your space? How do you do this, and how do you do it disruptively and stay healthy, not burn out, not break down, not have your confidence wiped out from underneath you? How are you doing it and managing to hold on to your health? And what does healthy disruption look like to you? Health is a big thing in GW4W. We really believe that if you can stay healthy, then you can lead more effectively. And what are your best tips, panelists, to share with each other? Okay? So that's it from me. I want to know what you're thinking. So who wants to go first?